EAGLES, Eagles.
Welcome in, everybody, to a draft day edition of Birds 365 here on JAKIB Sports. I'm your host, Zander Krause. That's my co-host, Johnny Mack, and we have been counting down the days for the last, 50, 60 days, Johnny Mack, here on the show, waiting for this day right here, and the NFL draft will kick off just 12 hours from now. John, how you doing on this Thursday morning, brother?
Finally here, man. That part of it's good, but it's dawning. It's a long day. Got to start at 8. This thing's not going to be over till after midnight, probably. So yeah. Long day. It's
going to be a long day, no doubt about it. We'll be grinding all night, especially with that sitting at 32, John. Barring a big trade up, they might be jamming the pick in right before midnight. With the way the draft, they like to elongate it out. So we will see what happens tonight. Birds sitting at 32 overall. We will give you guys kind of the overall rundown today, right? We talked about a lot of different things. I want to refresh where everybody is. We want to give our last prep, the whispers around the league that John has heard. A lot of new names popping up, a lot of different names popping up. I just listened to Daniel Jeremiah's final mock draft.
Don't even get me started with DJ, man. Don't even get me started.
I like DJ, though, so I got to listen to it a little bit. And then in hour number 2, everybody, we will have the great Ed Kratz. I love talking to Ed Kratz, so we'll get Ed Kratz up in hour number 2. Looking forward to doing that. But, Johnny Mack, let's just start it off, brother, and set the tone for everybody. It is draft day. What's at stake at 32 overall right now for the Philadelphia Eagles as they come into this draft? As Super Bowl champs, it's always a different approach, or at least a different feeling coming off a Super Bowl. It's only the second time we've ever been able to do this.
Well, I don't want to hype it up to that degree. I know people do. It's not going to, they're going to be good whatever happens, whether they trade up, trade down, stay put, take a player. Obviously 32, you're 32. So a lot of moving parts. You got to wait for the board, how it unfolds. I think it's pretty clear the Eagles want a ceiling type player. But I do want to start with DJ because I love Daniel Jeremiah. Love him. Tremendous at what he does. But, he had his annual pre-draft conference call with us last week. And I'm the one who asked him. I said, hey, look, there's a lot of mock drafts. There's a lot of hype that Walter Nolan would fall to the Eagles at 32. And DJ kind of not mocked me. I'm not, he didn't laugh at me, but he was like, yeah, that ain't happening. This is a top 15 player. So he rolls out his final draft. And lo and behold, Walter Nolan's not in it. And he's got the Eagles passing over Walter Nolan for Jihad Campbell.
Unbelievable.
Who, by the way,
Walter Nolan doesn't even go
in the first round. And Jihad Campbell, by the way, not a need position if you're talking about all-ball linebacker. I guess you can talk about Nakobe Dean's injury and blah, blah, blah. But Nakobe's going to be back this year, and he's certainly not going to play better. Maybe you play him at edge rusher. I've heard some medical stuff as well. Maybe there's some red flags that have popped up about Walter Nolan. Everybody talks about that nebulous stuff. So all this is always fluid. But he's not even in the first round. Come on, DJ.
I'm gonna go with Daz. I'm gonna go with Daz here. Maybe DJ knows something, Johnny Mack. Look, John, there's a lot of aggregators at the NFL draft that put out a whole lot of
you're telling me.
I don't think Daniel Jeremiah is really one of those guys. Now, you've always liked him. I like him. I've always read his work here at this time of the year. Does he know something? Are we going Jihad Campbell, baby, at 32?
He may know something as far as Walter Nolan and as far as him falling out late in the process. I mean, that's a potential possibility because there have been those whispers throughout the process. And he's very well connected. He's no aggregator. He's very well connected. Yeah, but Jihad Campbell. I'm going to guarantee Jihad Campbell's not a Philadelphia Eagle.
Wow, that's a big guarantee. Why not just wait out another day?
Because it makes no sense from a fit standpoint. What
do you see a little Micah in him in terms of he could play edge at the next level?
Well, I think he is an edge more.
Yeah, me
so
too.
than-
That's where I think maybe it's not, because people see linebacker and they're like, "Oh, no way." But really, that's a
But
player that I
he's
could see Vic
I've
loving.
talked about he's so undersized. He's 6'1". I realize everybody points to Micah, but Micah's Aaron Donald. Yeah, you can say, and they've said it with guys like Elijah Canty, who's a good player, and Ed Oliver is a good player, but
Right.
not Aaron Donald. And they're outliers for a reason. Guys like Micah Parsons and Aaron Donald. So I don't think the size that's my problem with Jihad Campbell as a prospect. He's a tweener. I don't think the instincts are there for all ball linebacker, and I don't think he's big enough to play edge on a consistent basis. But yeah, I mean, for the Eagles, obviously it would have to be edge, right? I mean, I would think. There's certainly not. We can go through the all ball linebacker history. We could bring up Jerry Robinson, even at 32. Yeah, I'm not. And if they pick him tonight, and I'll be the first one here tomorrow morning. I'll be doing it tonight, but I'll be here tomorrow morning apologizing to DJ. But yeah, I don't see that at all.
Me neither. I don't really see it at all with Jihad Campbell. I want to ask the people in the chat. So if you're in here, we appreciate everybody for being here today. As I mentioned, we got a great show planned. We got a great day of content planned for you guys all day today with the NFL draft. I'll be doing a draft pre-show. I'll be doing a mid-draft show, and then we'll be live right after the Philadelphia Eagles select. If they do select, even if they don't select, I'll go live tonight. But Johnny Mac, I assume also you'll be down at the NovaCare complex as well, right? Covering it tonight.
Yeah. That's that whole point of it. We'll get. I imagine Howie's going to go very quickly after 32 because he wants to get back to work and go to bed.
Yeah, go to bed, get ready for day
later.
2 and day 3. Yeah.
So I imagine he'll go pretty quickly, and obviously, if they do take a player, we get conference calls with the players and that kind of thing. So yeah, I'll be there tonight. And I'll be checking in with you in between and all around these calls and throughout the weekend. Not just obviously the first round.
Yeah, it's a 3-day thing, man. 3-day event. The NFL draft has become. They turned it into a 3-day, 3-day extravaganza. So round 1 is tonight. Everybody starts at 8 p.m. Rounds 2 and 3 are tomorrow on Friday night. That kicks off at 6 p.m. That's a pain in the ass that they moved it up to 6 p.m. there. But anyway, I'll live with it. And then Saturday is rounds 4 through 7. That starts at noon Eastern time. All those times are Eastern. So that's the rundown on the next couple of days. Here's my question for the people in the chat. What is your dream scenario tonight? Who's the dream pick for you for the Philadelphia Eagles? Drop it in the chat below. I will read some of those comments later on. Any super chats we get today will be addressed as well. Johnny Mac, who would be? Give me 3 names that you think would be a home run for the Philadelphia. We're not playing
Walter Nolan.
Well, I don't know. Daniel Jeremiah apparently doesn't think so. But all right, Walter Nolan as one.
And this is from the Eagles' perspective, not my perspective. Shamar Stewart, who I believe, I think it's funny because I had Shamar falling to the Eagles at 32, which, the minute I published this stuff, I'm like, oh, that's never going to happen. And DJ's got him going at 14. I mean, and you've seen it if you pay attention. DJ said it, Albert Breer said it, all these really plugged in guys. The range of these it's never been like, there's not another example of it. It's crazy. Again, Walter Nolan can go top 10, and now DJ's got him falling down to the top 32. Shamar Stewart can go 11. He can go 9. He can go 14. He could go 32. It's crazy. You rarely have this because guys, this is more of a starter's draft is what everybody's describing it as. And everybody's got different boards and they got their little pocket of players.
Yeah.
And
I saw that Jeremiah tweet about that.
Yeah. And, that's just the way it is. That's the way this draft is. So I find it because people hate the Stewart pick for the Eagles. I'm like, man,
I don't.
32? Yeah, is he a project? Yeah. But you're
He is.
picking 32.
He's got some crazy traits, Johnny Mac. The size, the speed. I mean, he is an Eaglesy pick. You talk about traits. That is like trait heaven with that guy, Shamar Stewart. So it'd be interesting.
But I say it all the time about there's so much groupthink, and there's so much certainly. I'll be the first one to tell you, and I do this for a living, and I've been doing it for a lot of years, and I've talked to a lot of people. Nobody knows shit, so you don't know. And I'm not trying to insult people.
No, I know. Yeah, I hear you.
But when you talk about 32 to get somebody with the upside of a top 10 pick, I'll take that every day.
Right.
Every day. So those are the two guys that focused on as potential, both for the same reason. They're both great traits players. If you want to go the safer route, I'm a big Gray Zabel guy. But I don't think he's going to be there. But that guy.
I think he's going to go earlier than people think.
Yeah, I got him going 19 to Seattle.
Yeah, that's pretty good. That's around where I'm thinking. I think there's a chance he could go higher. Obviously, there's a chance, but I like that player, man. He's an interesting one.
Nick Scorton, I think is a good fit for the Eagles in the safe category. So those are a couple of the safer people, but they don't like being safe. They like, and Jeffrey Lurie says it, man. If you go along with the crowd, and I'm paraphrasing Jeffrey, that's how you're 8-8. That's how you're mediocre.
Right. Now
they play 17 games, but you get my point.
Yep.
That's how you become mediocre. If you follow the crowd, you got to be bold. And the Eagles do a good job with that. And to be honest, I would not. I would be safer. But, that's
you'd be safer overall, or you mean you'd be safer in this moment because you're coming off a Super Bowl and you already have a pretty damn good run?
I'd be safer overall. I don't like just going for swinging for the fences all the time.
You're not telling me you'd be Ryan Poles, are you?
No, I wouldn't be fleeced.
No, I'm just messing with you because I know you always give Ryan Poles some shit.
Well, there's a lot of bad GMs. And don't underestimate that part of it. Bad teams, bad organizations, bad GMs, starting with the New York Giants. And the Eagles generally take advantage of them. But I guarantee if one of those two players falls to the Eagles, there's going to be immense bitching around the NFL. Like, how do you get the same thing every year? How do they let good players fall to the Eagles? Well, they're not afraid of Jalen Carter. They believe that they can bring him into, the Bears. It's not like the Bears didn't think Jalen Carter was a good player. They just didn't have the confidence to believe they could bring him into the building and bring him along and with all the off the field stuff. So, the Eagles have a lot of confidence in that aspect of it, which is a good thing.
Yeah, no doubt. So there's your two players for Johnny Mac. Two good scenarios for John there with 32. John, the interesting part here is I do think Howie's going to make some trades in this draft. Obviously, there's basically a 100% chance that he shakes and bakes at some point in this draft. I just don't know if it's going to come tonight. And if it does come tonight, we've talked about trade up, trade back. There's so many different ways Howie can go. And one of the most interesting parts, John, about this draft is just the subjectivity aspect. I mean, you just brought up how teams have their players. I wonder where the surprises are going to come tonight. Like, will there be players that people think are going in round 2 that get all the way up and go earlier in round 1? Will there be Walter Nolans and Jihad Campbells who fall all the way down to round 2? That's what I'm looking for tonight. And then I think that's where Howie's going to make his move. If a player like that starts sliding and they like him, that's where Howie will pounce, Johnny Mac.
Yeah, and that's in every round. But, we're hyped. The first round is tonight, day 1. We got plenty of time to talk about day 2 and day 3, and we'll talk about it today into a little thing. But that's any cluster that I try to explain. The Eagles have sort of a cluster of picks with every group pick, and if there's one guy left in that cluster that they expect to be there at 64,
right,
they'll try to go up and get him. And if they don't get him, they can't get up, they'll probably fall back. That's sort of how they do it. Now, again, sometimes you have to pick a player. And the best example of that was Marcus Smith, probably, where the Eagles got a little bit too cute. All their guys were gone and they couldn't get out. And all of a sudden they got to take a player, and it's Marcus Smith, who, didn't work out, to say the least. So
that's what I'm actually a little not worried, but like that's what I could see that happening tonight, John. If the Eagles aren't able to identify early, not early, but like let's say you get to pick 22. If the Eagles don't have an idea of what they're going to do, which is hard to do because you got to wait for 10 more picks, could they get hamstrung, into 32 where you lose your trade back partner, Nolan's off the board, Stewart's off the board, all your guys are off the board, and you end up taking, a lesser prospect or maybe somebody that you didn't want to take because you couldn't get a trade out partner.
No, I mean, preparation will not be a problem for the Philadelphia Eagles. They're not going to be, they're not going to be, oh no. I mean, that's just, that's not going to be the issue. The issue comes in where, again, they're going to have a group. It's usually 4 or 5 that they want at this particular position. And, the problem comes with the 6th guy. They have the 6th guy, but he's down from their sort of grading process. He's in the next tier of player. If they have to take him, they'll take him. They have a 7th guy. They have an 8th guy.
Right.
The problem becomes when you're taking a player you don't believe belongs in that position, which they'll never admit. And, well, okay, I shouldn't say that because occasionally they admit it. Marcus Smith being the example behind the scenes, not in public. But, yeah, I mean, it won't be for lack of preparation. And then sometimes you do have, Draft Day, the horrible movie that everyone loves on Draft Day with Kevin Costner and Jennifer Gardner and the famed Jacksonville GM, Jeff Carson, the worst GM in NFL history. Sometimes some of these young guys probably hem and haw because Howie was talking about his young days. And, when there was all this, he was the outsider and all these veteran GMs who didn't like to trade as much and were more conservative. And he's admitted, he didn't even call those guys, a little bit of intimidation aspect of, and now he's that guy. There are a lot of people intimidated by Howie Roseman.
Yeah.
In the NFL, but these young GMs, a lot of people wary.
That's why Howie, to some extent, I don't think he likes all the talk that people do of like, oh, you're fleece.
I think he likes that.
No, you fleece other GM. I saw a report yesterday, not a reporter, whoever it was. Somebody said, an insider said we were blocking all calls from the 215 area code. I don't think Howie wants.
Well,
that.
When it becomes legitimate, he loves when people blow. When people talk about how good he is. He's like anybody would like that. But if it does start affecting the job and people literally don't take calls, which then they shouldn't be a GM. But yeah, you can take advantage of young GMs. I don't think it's common sense. People took advantage of Howie before he learned. And again, I talk about it all the time. One of the strengths of the Philadelphia Eagles is their patience and their ability to stay the course with Howie. And whereas, the vast majority, I talk about it all the time, Joe Shane tonight. What is he going to do other than try to save his job? Is he going to be a steward of the organization? People say that. Bullshit.
Right.
They're a steward of keeping their jobs, not doing what's best for the organization. And that's all. And I'm not picking on him. That's all these GMs on a short leash.
Right.
How do I keep my job? Number one. Then secondly, they want to help the team. Obviously, you help the team, you save your job. But there are times when you have to think about the future. Cam Jurgens in 2022. Howie can do that. Other GMs can't do that. Future picks. He values future picks. He'll take a 4th rounder in 2027 for Dallas Goedert. Other people, if they were in the same situation, I need it now. I need it now.
Right.
They're not going to have a pick in 20. They're not going to be taking a pick in 2027. So that is a big part of the Eagles' success. A big part that he has the freedom to do stuff like that.
In a way, it's earned, right? I mean, he's had success. He's built good teams in Philly. So because of that, he's got a longer leash now than most other GMs in the league that don't. And a lot of that's owner-based, as John points to a lot here on the show. All right, I want to check in with some of the chat, the comments of the people who gave their dream picks, Johnny Mac, and then we'll go the opposite side, some nightmare scenarios here. Twiz the Jigga says Jahdae Barron. Devin Shanahan says Malachi Starks. Drew checked in. He said, dream, Mike Green falls and we trade up and get him between 15 and 24. I like that, Christensen. I wouldn't say dream for me, but I like it. Anton checks in. What's up, Anton? I believe Walter Nolan will be a bird. Abe says Mike Green. Steven says Jalen Walker. Twiz says James Pierce. So a lot of names, that are similar that we've talked about. Interesting one here. This might be a round 2 pick, but Benjamin Morrison is one. So there's a couple of names from the chat of the people who say those are some dream picks for the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, John, on the opposite side, who would be some nightmare pick? I mean, is there any players that you see right now that you'll walk out of tonight? You'll join the show after the pick and you'll say, what a calamity. Is there any of those players that you see in this draft or that you personally do not like or do not think are a good fit for the Birds?
Of that group? No, I think everybody's a fit. But Mike Green's interesting for the domestic violence stuff. I mean, Howie kind of bought that was a mistake by Howie. Now it's easily correctable. But he went on Todd McShay's show in Indianapolis at the scouting combine and made that comment about that we don't talk, right. We don't even do research and meanwhile Mike Green's up there talking about how he left Virginia in high school, which kind of opened people's eyes. Now, he's never convicted of anything, never, to my knowledge, never even charges brought up. But that's one where my buddy Mike Sealski asked Howie at his pre-draft, and he sort of started backing up there. Will they even look at him? Did they even look at him? I haven't heard a lot of Mike Green. I've said that. Right. To me, he's the best pass rusher in the draft, and it's not even close.
He's polished, man. He's a good player.
He's extremely polished for a college player. And he's a perfect fit from a football standpoint. Ultimately, I got him going 15 to Atlanta. They're been looking for an edge rusher for seems like 2 decades, but
yeah, it's a good fit for him too. I could see that.
So I don't think he's going to fall there, and if he does fall there to the Eagles' orbit, because they'd certainly have to trade up, I would think. Then he's got to answer all those questions about that kind of stuff, which is, again, you take your medicine. It's not that big of a deal, but it's why you shouldn't be so emphatic in the first place. So that was a rare mistake by Howie Roseman. I don't think they're going down the Mike Green route. Long way of saying it. Barron's a player I've talked about. The Eagles like him a lot. They think he's a perfect fit for fixed defense, zone player, natural, like Quinyon, off coverage in that mold. But I don't think he's getting to the Eagles' orbit. I think he might go to the Dolphins. Remember, the Dolphins are, I believe, 13. And they're moving on from Jalen Ramsey. So they have a significant need. I think that might be the landing spot for him. So all good fits, but I don't know how realistic some of them are. But again, the range of these prospects, if 1 or 2 teams pass them, like it would not shock me. I've been talking about Stewart a lot. It would not shock me if New Orleans takes him at 9, San Francisco takes him at 11. But if they don't, then he can tumble all the way down to the bottom of the first round. And that's, if Miami doesn't take Barron, well, where's he go next? Green Bay, maybe.
Yeah, right.
And then if Green Bay likes somebody else, all of a sudden he's tumbling. So it's all these little, it's like a game of Jenga. You pick the right one, you pick the wrong one, and the whole thing comes tumbling down.
Daniel Jeremiah had Barron going to the Commanders at 29. That would be interesting. I do think the Commanders are an interesting pick here just because of they're a couple slots ahead of the Eagles. If Howie did want to do a targeted trade up, as we've talked about on the show, I think 28's the minimum because you want to jump over the Commanders. But I don't know if the Detroit Lions are going to be looking to tango. So maybe you got to go 27 with the Ravens, 26 with the Rams, 25 with the Texans, 24 with the Vikings. Of those teams, I think the Vikings, as we've talked about, are the most likely just because they don't have a lot of picks. And then I think maybe the Rams are an option, but they might be looking for a player as well. And they might not want to help out the Eagles, who they're trying to catch up with. Daniel Jeremiah had them taking Omarion Hampton because their running back. Why am I blanking on his name? What's that?
Kyron Williams.
Yeah, Kyron Williams.
Kyron Williams is a good player.
Yeah, but he had one run of 30-plus yards last year. That's it. Saquon had 10 in the regular season and 3 in the playoffs. That's what Daniel said on the show. So he's like, they want a home run hitter, and Omarion Hampton could be that guy.
Well, I don't think Hampton's getting by Denver.
I don't either. Hampton's a good player. I think he's a little bit slept on because of Genty. He's not the top running back in the draft, but he is a good player.
I don't like comparing people to Saquon. I think that's a bad comp situation because nobody's going to look good, especially compare them to last year. I don't think running back's a weakness. If I'm going to criticize Kyron Williams, it's ball security. He fumbles too much, and he fumbled twice against the Eagles. The first game they were going right down the field. He fumbled. Then you had that big fumble when Jalen Carter punched it out. So I have some ball security, but he's a really good player. I don't see that as a significant need other than he's not Saquon Barkley. If you want Saquon, good luck, Ashton Genty's a legitimate.
He's Saquon Barkley, but you're looking for a home run hitter. You got to looking for a guy that's got some top end. That guy that can go the distance if you need him. Johnny Mack.
Then take Jaden Blue in the third day. If you just want somebody you can, he's a good back. He's a good back. It's like one of those things where if you can get Ashton Genty, all right, but you're not going to be able to get Ashton Genty. Sort of my Chester Taylor, Adrian Peterson conversation all the time. Well, yeah, if you can get Adrian Peterson, if you can get Saquon Barkley, if you can get
right.
And I don't want to go to the point of Ashton Genty, but he's a legit top 10 prospect.
He's interesting. I can't wait to see where he goes.
I think he's going to Jacksonville. He's probably the most popular player in the top 10. Jacksonville wants him. Las Vegas wants him. The Bears want him. So that's where you might see people jockeying. But I keep hearing Jacksonville with Ted McMullen as well. I'm like, and they're such a bad organization. I apologize, Tony. They're such a bad organization. I could see them making that move. And boy, will I be ripping them if they make that move. Ted McMullen at number 5.
I know that's way high. Daniel Jeremiah had the Cowboys taking Ted McMullen at 12, which Johnny Mack has talked about a little bit here on the show as well. Good stuff there, John. We're going to get into some of the whispers coming out around the NFL. I think there's a lot of new, hearing a lot about Shador. You're hearing a lot about Jackson Dart. Holy moly, the hype train on Dart. That thing's a freight train.
Well, if people listen to this show, they've already known that.
Yeah, they were ready for it. But boy, it's really picking up steam everywhere now. Now, apparently, I saw something on Twitter yesterday. Joe Schoen's son, has an Instagram account. You know how the kids are, John. They're all on social media. So he posted up last night like a Jackson Dart highlight reel on his social media. Now I'm and then he locked his account so that nobody can see it. Now everybody's like, "Oh, the Giants are going to take Jackson Dart." So
they better get over Pittsburgh.
There's a lot of that. I love it. But I do want to give John a little updates actually that happened on the Eagles yesterday. We talked a little bit about some wide receivers. fifth-year options. All right. The Eagles declined the fifth-year option of Jahan Dotson. All right. We all expected that to come, but they did make it official yesterday. Now we're waiting on, I believe we're waiting on Kenyon Green, who they traded for. And then you're also waiting on Jordan Davis. I'm not sure if they already did Kenyon Green or declined his. I mean, I don't think they're picking that up, obviously.
No, they're not.
But just waiting on Jordan Davis.
Well, just the Eagles don't confirm anything when it comes to contracts, but yeah, they're not picking up the fifth-year option. But that's not a surprise. If anybody thought there was a potential, they were picking up the fifth-year option for Jahan Dotson. We've said it pretty clearly on this show. They're not. They're not going to pick up the fifth-year option on Kenyon Green. Jordan Davis, they had Kenny Pickett. They wouldn't have picked up the fifth-year option on Kenny Pickett. Now that's Cleveland's responsibility, and they will not pick it up. Jordan Davis is the only key one, the only sort of decision, legitimate decision. And the Eagles have until May 2nd, so they're going to make that relatively quickly. But yeah, with Dotson, and I've mentioned sneaky trade candidate as well, potential trade candidate. You know, if the Eagles want to save a couple bucks, like they did with Kenny Pickett, basically same thing. And he's, you know, if he's here, like I said, I like the player better than most people seem to like the player, but to me, he's the best wide receiver 3 of the Nick Sirianni era by far that the Eagles have had. He showed he can make plays when the ball comes his way in the playoffs, but he's not going to be here in 2026. Not going to be here. So if your mentality is, well, we signed Terrace Marshall, we like Terrace. I don't know what the Eagles believe with Terrace Marshall. He didn't do much, but they liked him coming out of the draft. A lot of people did. High draft pick. You know, if they think he's still got something and they can bring it out of him, they have Johnny Wilson. They have Anaya Smith. They like to keep their draft picks. You know, if they believe that, they could save a couple bucks and get a 6th or 7th round pick and maybe use that to move up again or do something else. So sneaky trade candidate, I would say, Jahan Dotson.
Yeah, interesting stuff there. And then you think the Eagles would probably maybe take a receiver at some point in the later rounds, maybe on that day 3 on Saturday, could pick up a wide out, and we'll talk about that. So good stuff there, Johnny Mac. John, a lot of rumblings coming up around the league. I just brought up Jackson Dart with the Giants. What else are you hearing draft day? Doesn't have to be Eagles related. Any player, because I think every player in some way obviously affects the Eagles. You're sitting at 32. Any player that gets hyped could push another player down the board. Any player that falls could make another player go earlier. So everything kind of affects the Eagles when you're sitting at 32 overall. What are you hearing this morning, Johnny Mac, from insiders around the league?
Well, I do think some of the stuff that we've talked about, the quarterbacks, I think was interesting. I think Albert Breer only, and I haven't seen his last, he puts out his last mock draft this morning. I don't know if it's up yet. I think he said he's only got one quarterback going.
Who was that you said?
Albert Breer.
Oh, Breers.
He's usually very good.
Yeah.
And I find that hard to believe, but obviously if that's the case and there's fewer even quarterbacks than we all imagine, that's bad for the Eagles. You know, because you do have Cleveland and the Giants at the top of the second round. So if they're content to sit there and get whomever,
right,
that I think that's a bad situation. But ultimately, I think Pittsburgh's going to start the process and take, whether it's, they seem to be, and that's where all the Jackson Dart stuff started. Some Giants, but the thought around the league is the Steelers like Dart more than Shedeur Sanders. Now, maybe that's subterfuge, and maybe they really like Shedeur Sanders. But either way, I think they're taking a quarterback at 21. And if they do, I think that starts, especially the Giants, I think that gets the Giants on edge. and they'll try to trade back in, probably with Minnesota at 24, to get a quarterback because they desperately need a quarterback. They're in that bad situation. I've heard some injury stuff over recent days with Will Johnson, the Michigan corner.
Yeah, I saw that.
And Jihad Campbell. And maybe that's where the drop comes from DJ's standpoint. And then just the wide, I've been talking about it for days now, the wide range. Ted McMullen is another guy. It's like, boy, if he does get past the Cowboys, there's a guy who could go 5, 12, and then tumble way, way down. I don't even see a natural fit. Maybe the Chargers, because everybody drops the football
right
there. So he might, he might go very early. I mentioned, Walter Nolan, Stewart from the Eagles' perspective. So many of those players. I think the tackles are all going to go. You might see 3 tackles in the top 10. Will Campbell, Armand Membu,
yep,
and Kelvin Banks.
Kelvin Banks,
Jr.
yeah. I've seen a lot of Kelvin Banks recently as well. His name seems to be getting a little bit more love now.
Yeah, he's a good player. People like him around the league. So, and it's very top heavy too. The class as a whole. Like last year, it was really deep on the offensive line. This year, it seems to be people like the top, but then there's a big drop off. So if you do want to tackle, you have to act early, or you're getting into the second tier guys pretty quickly. So I think that part of it is starting to, and then the receivers as a whole, it starts with Ted, but I don't like that group. I don't like Matthew Golden. He's probably going to be a first. My favorite is the kid from Ohio State. I don't even know if he's going in the first round, but he's more of a wide receiver too. And for what it's been, there's been so many good wide receiver drafts, and I think that's the opposite of tackle. I don't think the guys at the top are as good as they usually are, but then it gets deep, and you could probably get a similar receiver in the second round. Tight ends, which is interesting from the Eagles' perspective. We're going to get some clarity on Dallas Goedert because the Eagles have been very close to the best about tight ends. No obvious interaction with tight ends. I still think they have to pick a tight end at some point. And obviously they're not going to be in a position to get the 2 top ones, but
Right.
How quickly do you pivot towards Taylor or Arroyo or Ferguson? Or do you wait for day 3? I brought up Gunnar Helm and Mitchell Evans. But they need something at tight end if they're not going to bring back Dallas Goedert.
Yeah, the hype train on speaking of tight end, the hype train on Colston Loveland's pretty good too. He's another guy that, I mean, obviously everybody knows he's a good player, but he hasn't been talked about as much just because he's not the top tight end. You got Tyler Warren as well. So I'm interested to see where Colston Loveland goes, because I think Tyler Warren's going to be a top 10 pick. A lot of good storylines coming into the draft tonight, Johnny Mac. I'm fascinated though by the Jackson Dart stuff. I mean, I went back and watched some of him last night after we brought him up on the show here, and I watched the John Gruden did like the QB thing with him. So I watched some of that. I was interested in that. He says he models his game after Jalen Hurts. Daniel Jeremiah comped him to Jalen Hurts. Like, that's pretty interesting. That's the first quarterback I've heard come up that directly said that about Hurts. And then you have obviously Daniel Jeremiah saying he sees it in his game. So that's interesting. That's where I think maybe John Mara heard that and he's like, oh, we need our own Jalen Hurts here in New York, and he's going to step in. Jackson Dart at number 3 overall, everybody. Get ready for it.
Yeah, I don't think anybody has made fun of the New York Giants more than me. Maybe other than Chicago, I think nobody's made more poor decisions over the last 4 or 5 years. But Yeah, I don't believe they're that dumb. Even I don't believe
I don't either. I'm just messing with people. But no, I did see though that Dana Jeremiah, that's legitimately what he said when he said Dart. He said that his pro comp is Jalen Hurts. And then Jackson Dart said, I model my game. I watch the most tape on Jalen Hurts.
Well, I think that from Jackson Dart's instance, I think, that goes back to our disrespect. I don't see that at all. Eagles fans have this sort of, I don't know, complex that everyone is disrespected. I think it's the exact opposite. I think Jalen Hurts is a ton of respect around the league, and it doesn't surprise me at all when young players start to gravitate and compare themselves, although you shouldn't, young players, to any proven player, because you're just creating.
Why do you say they shouldn't?
Yeah, you're creating unrealistic expectations. Like, if somebody says, "Hey, I think I'm like Joe Montana,"
Well, yeah, I agree with that, but I do think there's an element of like you look at people who are successful and what you're trying.
Well, no, I mean you generally frame, and I didn't hear what he said, so I mean he probably framed it as, I think I have similar traits and blah blah blah. Although, I doubt he squats 600 pounds, but maybe he does. He's a similar size, 6'2", 220-ish. He's got similar athleticism from, he's not Lamar Jackson explosive, but he's got good movement skills. So from that standpoint, yeah, it doesn't. And when you win the Super Bowl, as you've seen with time and men's health, you become, in a lot of ways, you become the face of the league, at least for a short period of time. So it doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. So Dart said, he said it on the Kay Adams show. I've tried to model my game after Jalen Hurts.
And that's fine. Model, because you always get that question. You'll hear that all weekend.
Yeah, right. You hear that.
Is there anybody you model your game after?
Right.
Yeah, that's fine, but yeah, understandable, similar size, like I said.
Yep.
Similar athleticism, and what CPS, the same work ethic. That's probably the delineation.
Yeah, right. And the same emotional stability. How about that? Let's get to a couple super chats. I will take some comments from people. We got Ed Kratz coming up in hour number 2. So looking forward to talking to Ed. It is draft day, everybody. Will the Eagles make a pick tonight? They're sitting at 32. One trade back, one spot back, and they're out of the first round. And we'll talk to you on Friday night. So we'll see what they end up doing tonight. Here's a super chat from JD3 checking in. Our resident Harrison Bryant super fan, the